Welcome to the Redeemer Podcast. I'm your host, Zach, but today I'm blessed to have Redeemer students Simon and Owen serve as hosts today. We have a very special episode of the Redeemer Podcast that explores the Pascal Centre. But before I turn it over to them, if it is your first time here, make sure to like and subscribe, share with a friend, and check out some of our other episodes that explore various aspects of Redeemer Christian education and so much more. Thank you for making us part of your day. And with that, Simon and Owen, here you go.
Good morning, Dr. Cooper. How are you doing today?
Good morning. I'm doing well, and I'm really delighted to be here.
And we are delighted to have you here.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on.
Yes.
Just to start, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where did you get your doctorate? What are you passionate about? Where have you taught? What have you done?
Certainly. So it turns out that I'm originally from the States, and I'm a Canadian by choice.
Okay.
Redeemer University has everything to do with that because I did my undergraduate work at Trinity Christian College, and there Dr. Calvin Searvelt was my mentor for my philosophy major. But my eye really was on political philosophy, and the U of T, University of Toronto, was a good place to do that. And I could also take a side trip and study with Dr. Bernard Zylstra at the Institute for Christian Studies part-time. And so Toronto was the destination, and I did my master's and my doctorate at the University of Toronto in political philosophy, master's, and then international relations.
Okay.
And then in God's providence, the next step opened up to be Redeemer College, because the people here wanted to found something in Christian education so that young people from Ontario would stay in Ontario. Mm-hmm. And there was enough to so that when Redeemer opened, there were still students going to Calvin, Trinity, and Dort. And there were even more now coming to Christian higher education because it was available in Ontario. So that was really awesome.
Okay.
So what state do you originally come from?
So I was born in New Jersey, and my great hope is that you can't tell that by my accent.
I think you've lost it over years, I'm sure.
I've worked hard at it.
Good.
I haven't heard enough A's though from you to confirm you're Canadian.
No.
Yeah. All right. And for those listening and don't know, you were at one point for quite a while Redeemer's president, and you served prior to that as VP academic.
Yes, and actually started out. So I had a hand in being executive director of the College Association and was present when the original charter was granted to Redeemer Reformed Christian College, which was the longer legal name.
Right.
And it was really wonderful how the Lord led, because so I started out teaching. But I was also academic program coordinator in the background, and by '86, it had become clear to me that I had gifts in leadership and administration. I had to remind the faculty that along with teaching, administration was also a gift of the Spirit, right? Yes. So I wasn't going over to the dark side, really.
Yeah.
And that's when I became vice president academic, and God kept opening doors in His time. And I became president in '94 and served in that capacity for 16 years.
Wow.
Retired from that in 2010, and then spent 10 years working with Christian Higher Education Canada, which were Christian universities and colleges and seminaries, a group of about 34 institutions across Canada. So Christian higher education has been my life, and I retired in 2020.
Great. Okay. And Dr. Cooper was just telling me before the episode that when he left Redeemer, they presumed that his retirement was retirement altogether.
Yeah, people ask me, they come up to me and say, well, how's your retirement going? I say, well, but actually, I'm not retired. They kind of got it wrong there.
Fair enough. So I'm sure you've accomplished quite a bit. Maybe you could tell us one or two of your fondest memories from your career.
Yeah, well, I certainly was thankful that I was able to get a few articles in books, and in that way sort of round out the that academic side of who I was. But greatest accomplishments were in the area of institution building, and God opened doors at Redeemer. And so when I started working at Redeemer, Redeemer had to have a religious degree because the secular mythology in Ontario was that religious education, religiously based education, academic degrees would come from provincial universities, and if you were religiously based, you had to give a religious degree. So there was this, coming from the U.S. where Christian colleges and universities were part of the mainstream, to be told that, I just couldn't abide that. And that was one of the things that I felt called to, is to come and set that right. And that happened in 1998 when Redeemer was granted the BA and BSc degrees. And so that was really a high point. And then again in 2000 when Redeemer got the name university, because we were always being asked, well, what are you? And then you try to explain that you were a Christian university, and that was an oxymoron to people in Ontario. Right. It's not anymore.
That's good.
Yes, and so the name change, and then a B.Ed in 2004, and then the Lord completed it in 2020 when the charter was again revised to Redeemer University. Yeah. So those have been, the high points where I just say, praise God. He granted us, we are now recognized for who we really are as a Christian university.
Right.
That's awesome.
That is great. Yeah. So to dive a little bit into the topic of this podcast, which is your involvement with the Pascal Centre. So can you just give us a little bit about what your relationship was with it, and in your view, what it was all about from your perspective?
Right. So I just give thanks for the various gifted professors that the Lord called to Redeemer, and I tried to view the administrative positions that I had as VP and then as president as trying to support and undergird those efforts. And so that was really my role as vice president academic, was to see if we could make it institutionally possible for a center to be here. What would that look like? How would it be administered? How could we fit it in to the whole institutional framework that we had here? And so that, as vice president, I worked at that, and Pascal Centre came to fruition, and then as president, you're more of a promoter, and so there I think it was simply to help showcase the fact that here we were doing not only Christian teaching and student formation, but also research, which is a calling of any university and also of Redeemer University.
Mm-hmm. And so maybe a bit more into its beginnings then, because I guess as time has gone on, you've seen that kind of unfold in the Pascal Centre. But when it was first proposed and such, what were your kind of initial thoughts? What were your hopes? And I guess maybe give us a bit of a background into your involvement with the formation of the Pascal Centre.
Okay, well, in terms of the the vision of the Pascal Centre, Redeemer was founded on the idea that it was called to be a faith-based university in wider Canadian parlance. That was the best way to describe it, rather than saying Christian. And so it was really exciting to see one of the strongholds of the secular spirit of the age was the idea that science is neutral, and that faith is somehow inimical. It doesn't belong there. And so it was exciting to have someone sort of take up the banner and enter right into the fray, to counter that view and say no. There is not a tension. There is not a dichotomy between faith and science, and really to say that to two audiences. One, to the mainline secular practitioners who would hold to scientific naturalism, but the other to Christians who might say, well, science is kind of anti-Christian, so we really shouldn't go into that.
Right.
We should go into theology or English or philosophy, that kind of thing. And also to those Christians practicing science who are dualists and basically said, I love my Lord, and then but when I do science, then I do science.
Right. Right.
And so that it was just it flowed naturally from the Reformed Christian vision of Redeemer, right. And it was an important issue that needed to be addressed at that time when I think that paradigm of neutrality was still very much alive.
Right. Yeah, that's very similar from what we heard from Dr. Vandermeer last week, the destroying this dichotomy that there is.
Yes.
Trying to create this bridge.
Yes, and one of the language is so important, and one of the things that he did as someone who he'd won an award for his research in science, and so was respected in that way, had the street creds, if you will. But when he entered this discussion, then faith and science was the wrong terminology. And so what he endeavored to do was to try to show that all science has presuppositions. Mm-hmm. And one way to do that, he came up with the term the role of beliefs in science. Yeah. And so then, and that was the powerful thing for me in my philosophy degree at Trinity too, to say, wait a minute, we've got a level playing field here. Right. We all have beliefs. Now, what are the beliefs of the secularists that underpin and let's look at them. Are they consistent? Are they fruitful? And that's what Dr. Vandermeer did, which I think was so important, is not only to take that posture, but also to change the language. Because to say the role of beliefs in science was to not right away fall into, faith. Oh, here comes faith again.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he reframed the discussion, as it were, and that was very important.
Yeah. From your own work, could you tell us a little bit more about what you did specifically? What were your interactions like with the Pascal Centre or with Dr. Vandermeer specifically? Maybe you can go a little bit into that.
Yeah, no, it was, I think Dr. Vandermeer had a good sense for the need for structure and organization and whatnot. For some faculty members, that's sort of a bothersome encumbrance, if you will, and so he was anxious to set up something which would be workable and sustainable, and so in that sense. We had never had a center like that at Redeemer, so it was a question of saying, okay, we have our university senate. They have to approve certain things. What is it that they need to improve in order to set up the structure such that the Pascal Centre can have its own advisory council and be in that way have its own oversight, but also give reports so that the institution can oversee and make sure that it continues to be of good academic standard and consistent, with the basis of Redeemer. And there was one interesting thing that we needed to work out, and that is when it came to the question of hiring, we would want to hire people at Redeemer, of course, who subscribe to our statement of basis and principles,
right,
but.
Right.
Jitse came to me and he said, well, look, I'm dealing with people who don't and can't because, there are any number of, Catholics who would not want to teach here and couldn't subscribe, or secularists, and they need to be part of this network.
Right.
And so we looked at that. We said, yeah, no, of course, that's right. And so we had a provision so that fellows of the Pascal Centre would be able to sign on and even receive funds without subscribing to the Statement of Basis and Principles.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so just, a small detail, but again, very important to balance the integrity of Redeemer with the integrity of what the Pascal Centre was trying to do, given its mission.
Yeah.
Right.
So it really seems like it's almost paved the way for what the Doivier Center became, and now the Al Walters Center.
That's right. And with the Doivier Center, a different mission, but certainly, yes, the idea of being able to have these centers so that they had proper autonomy, but also proper oversight. And then the other thing, of course, was the financial relationship. To what extent was Redeemer able to contribute funds? Certainly, it contributed gifts in kind, as in terms of the space, people's administrative time, and so on. But the other place where this would come together, and that was even more in my time as president, and that is that when donors, outside donors, benefactors would come, and by the way, centers like this don't exist without there being benefactors who catch the vision.
Yes.
And that's what happened with the Pascal Centre, a very wealthy benefactor family, foundation and whatnot came. And then the role of myself as vice president or president was to help them see that the context that the Pascal Centre was in was very supportive and very respectable and so on, so that it would help build confidence so that the financial resources would come.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So changing gears a little bit, what would you say your fondest memory of the Pascal Centre was?
Certainly, one of the memories was the lunch that we had in my office, where there were smiles on the husband and wife benefactors who were hearing the things that were inspiring them and leading to the large donation that came, that was then stewarded by Redeemer and spent by the Pascal Centre. But my best memory was, and we talked earlier, and I think it was the '98 conference. Okay. And anyway, it was the conference. It was an international conference. Okay. The meeting room where the tables were set up ended up being the art studio. Okay. For whatever reason, and there I sat. And here were world-class scholars whose names I recognized from books they had written. Yeah. They wanted to be here. Yeah. They wanted to talk with Dr. Vandermeer, and they felt part of the community of dialogue and investigation that the Pascal Centre was part of. And I thought, isn't this amazing? Yeah. This little... Who knows what we were then, 600, 800 student undergraduate place, and work is being done here that is of significance in the wider academic community, the wider Christian academic community that is seeking to blaze a distinctive path in the re-understanding of the role of beliefs in science. Yeah.
It's remarkable. Yeah, that's really cool.
That's great. Yeah. And you've touched on this a bit, but how would you characterize a neo-Calvinist, just because we're at Redeemer, a neo-Calvinist approach to education, and specifically geared towards the Pascal Centre, but it can extend broader than that if you like?
Yeah, so the phrase I used to use, by the way, was because people would say, well, is this a denominational school? Is it Christian Reformed? No, it's not Christian Reformed. It's Reformed Christian. Well, what's Reformed Christian? Well, it's a movement. And, coming out of the Reformation, there was the Anabaptist, the Lutheran, the Calvinist, and the Catholic, approaches to relating the Bible to life. And so we're in that Reformation, the Calvinist Reformation tradition. When it came to neo-Calvinism, then I tended to tell people we were building a Kuyperian neighborhood here. And I found inspiration in that, only to learn later that, of course, I had to have Bavinck in there, too. And I'm not a theologian, but the more I heard, the more I realized that there were more. Because I was a philosophy major, so I learned Doyward and Vollenhoven, and then the pantheon began to grow a little bit. But the common ground then, maybe out of Kuyper, was that a world and life view, and I really love the term world and life, because it's not just academic; it applies to personal life as well. Is integral to all scholarship, and that's really the belief piece. So you could say that Neo-Calvinism, a Kuyperian neighborhood, is integralist because, and if you read The Cross and Our Calling, you'll find that language there. Okay. In other words, we're not importing belief into scholarship. Scholarship, as created by God, has belief at its basis, right. And so for students, this is for me as a student, was so inspiring because then I realized I can go into any area, and I just felt so empowered because when I went to graduate school at the U of T, then I could say to the Marxists, well, look, you've got beliefs too, so right. Don't come at me like I'm bringing something to the discussion right. that's not already there. Right. And then, but the other side of that was, that you then needed to engage all scholarship. So you had to go to Marxism, or you have to go now to woke ideology, and you have to say, well, wait a minute, this is God's world. They're bumping into something here. Right. So I have to engage them. I can't just do the cheap critique, you've got an anti-Christian starting point, so I'm out of here. Right. You have to go in and say, what are the nuggets? Right. So, for me as a student, there was always that obligation. I'm serving God in my scholarship because it's a calling. He made it. Sure. But going in there, I have to take secular scholarship seriously. And that would be the common grace piece, if you will, to go in there and do serious scholarship. Right. And, of course, that's what Pascal was doing. It was doing serious scholarship. People would read it and say, I have to deal with this. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Whether you eat or whether you drink or whatever you do it all to the glory of God.
Amen.
Hello, everyone. It is Simon, one of the co-hosts of this episode. I just wanted to briefly interrupt this podcast to tell you about an exciting opportunity. The Pascal Centre, throughout its history, has run a number of important conferences on questions of faith and science, and out of such conferences have come a number of notable publications. One such publication, based on the 1992 conference, was a 4-volume set of books called Facets of Faith and Science. And Facets of Faith and Science explored questions of faith and science. And for those who are interested in such questions or would like to know a little bit more about the Pascal Centre and its history, this is a great resource. And we are excited to announce, actually, that we are going to be giving away complete sets of Facets of Faith and Science for those who would be interested. If you'd like more information on this giveaway, please consult the show notes below. Again, in brief, if you would like a complete set of Facets of Faith and Science, please check the show notes below. Now back to the podcast. Yeah. So kind of from that, and talking about this Kuyperian neighborhood, how do you think other centers can learn from what the Pascal Centre has accomplished and has done, and what advice, or what would you point to in the Pascal Centre that you say, okay, this is something that you guys should try and emulate in your own academic work?
Yes. Well, certainly I think it was clear to all of us at Redeemer that centers are important ways to build bases of collaboration, because in that way, scholarship is a team sport. It really is, and you do need people who may sit alone and interact and write books more in isolation. But the best Christian scholarship happens through collaboration, and a center is one way to extend that collaboration beyond the parameters of any one institution. And so then you get an opportunity to, from here, go out to other places, but the reverse then is also true, and that is that you you end up having, as I was recalling in that conference, you can have conferences where you're bringing together experts in the field in order to really interact and try to further insight. And of course, the best thing happens at the lunches, right, around the tables. You know, and then you realize that you're part of a wider and now really a worldwide community of Christian higher education that is seeking to do God's work in this area. So a center, it needs to be focused, obviously, and you can't do everything, so you have to try to narrow down. But that basis for collaboration that really empowers the scholars that you have and gives them a basis on which they can do their work in a more fruitful way. So certainly the Pascal Centre helped blaze a trail. And I think translation and book writing, you can help finance projects that way. Yeah. There's that Canadian piece, right? Got the pronunciation right.
So did you make a point of going to lunches, like when conferences were happening and stuff, just for the action and the kind of to see things, or?
Yes, and that was wonderful. I never felt like, I didn't read widely enough in order to really jump in there, and engage and give a paper or something like that. But I had an undergraduate liberal arts and science education, and I even found that relating to faculty. So I could go in, to the science folks. And I could talk about the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, right?
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then you could turn around and go into English and talk about feminist hermeneutics and so I had like an inch deep.
I think you have 6 PhDs by the end of the
course. in many different areas, and so it was enough to keep me curious. And make me feel like if I went to lunch, I could ask a question or two.
That's awesome.
And get in on the debates. So for me, it was very enriching because when you're sitting in your administrative office, you don't always get to kind of dive in and realize what's actually going on. And so conferences were an opportunity to kind of get in touch with the front lines and say, this is what it's all about. This is why we're doing this.
Absolutely.
It really got me excited.
And it speaks also to how important something like the core program can be to kind of give you and equip you to have those conversations.
Absolutely. And, I carried with me, the benefits of that all my life, and especially because I ended up in an academic setting and had to relate to faculty from all kinds of different disciplines. And so, it was a joy to spend my career at Redeemer. Once or twice, I sort of asked the Lord, "Am I supposed to stay here? Am I going to be a lifer?"
Right.
I think I asked twice, and both times the answer was, "Yes, stay here." Yeah. And I'm so blessed that I did.
That's great. Yeah, that's great to hear. Yeah, it's a great opportunity to show the world that Christianity, although not merely an intellectual faith, we are an intellectual faith, and that we aren't just, and we have something to offer.
Exactly.
And I think that centers like the Pascal Centre are evidence of that. Now, specifically asking you the question, though, whether it be your experience at Redeemer or just in Christian higher education generally, how do you think these centers can be forces for good, specifically in their own universities or in the broader education field?
Well, probably, what that would lead me to say is when they can ask questions academically that aren't being asked elsewhere. So in that way, and if possible, even make a contribution to mainstream debate in academia. Right. It's becoming more difficult because society in general is becoming more polarized and more shrill and more rather quickly dismissive, on the basis of labeling and so on. So I think the challenge has become more difficult. And on the other hand, I had an older brother who was in philosophy as well, and he too, and it was more he worked in Christian anthropology, and he just found it appalling how many Christian scientists basically had acquiesced to assumptions of scientific naturalism. He just, so in that way, there are two mission fields.
Right, absolutely.
There really are, and one is to go to fellow believers who are, being hampered or they're underappreciating the resources, and God's not getting the full glory, as well as the wider world. So I don't know if that answered the question.
That's helpful. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. What would you say, particularly for like an undergrad institution, something like how can something like the Pascal Centre be helpful for? Because I know this is, I guess, Pascal Centre is more so geared towards academics, but kind of in this setting at an undergrad institution, how can something like the Pascal Centre be helpful?
Yeah, so I think any center, and I hope the Walters Center is continuing that, and in a way, you here before me are evidence of that, and that is to enlist students in the quest, in the work. Okay. As whether it's as teaching assistants or it is at research assistants, so that you're co-writing a paper with a prof, right. Because in that way you're being mentored. Right. So I think it's really important, and centers can help to do that, to mentor up and coming generations and inspire them so that they can then take the baton and go even further and deeper. And I think a center accomplishes that way in ways that simply lectures in classrooms, or, I guess inviting speakers to campus. But it's important for students to see that and not just be stuck in a bubble. And
I guess that kind of goes along with the Hyperion neighborhood of learning in all of life and how we live as Christians in all of life.
Absolutely, and then just seeing how broad that task is. And for me, I'm serving on a couple of boards now that deal with, one is Langham Partnership Canada, and they deal with majority world scholars in the area of theology. So it's, but to see what God is doing now in the majority world, and how Christian education and Christian higher education is part and parcel of that. That is very exciting, and that is where we in Western culture, which is on the decline, have an opportunity to take our treasures and share them with the majority world, and at the same time also in interacting with the majority world, listen to other voices. Some of whom don't have enlightenment baggage. And then to hear from them how they approach scholarship. And so, there's I think a nice cycle of enrichment that can happen.
That's awesome.
In the world church.
Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah, and I guess one of the benefits we have as being a global body of believers is having almost easy access to that, where we have brothers and sisters that we can easily interact with and learn from. And sure, you see that in education. I'm sure you've seen that. I mean, just as you've mentioned.
In the time that I was president, the online phenomenon was just beginning, and in a way, and also for Redeemer that occurred. COVID really gave it a boost in terms of making, there were more cameras and technology and whatnot, and now brothers and sisters in the majority world have that as well. They skipped the whole telephone line, right? And so access and accessibility and whatnot there is just it's ripe for growth.
Awesome.
Yeah,
and it's crazy to see how the globalization mixed with just the evangelical faith is just spread so quickly across the world.
Yes.
Like within 200 years, we have obviously not Christians everywhere, but there are Christians in so many parts of the world that would have been foreign 300 years ago, 200 years ago.
Oh, no, so true, so true. And those are the growth spots in a way because, it's fresh for these people, and they don't have the burden of the Enlightenment. They are tuned into the spiritual dimension of reality and miracles, bring them on. And very interesting. I remember Joel Carpenter, who was very interested in world Christianity. He was from Calvin University. He used to say, the next Kuiper will come. She will be a 30-year-old, dark-skinned Christian from the continent of Africa.
Right.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's tremendous. Yeah. Yeah. So what then would you say, I guess, to Christian academics now who are maybe just starting out their careers and want to live out their faith well in their field? What message would you have for them, or even for an undergrad student who's graduating now? Maybe I guess those are slightly different.
Yeah, there are even that many more opportunities now. In a way, it may be becoming harder to be the witness that we're called to in North America, both economically in terms of jobs. What can PhDs do now? Is there a place for that? I was on the board of Global Scholars Canada for a time, and that is a network which is seeking to take scholars from the West and plug them into where there are needs in the majority world. And so just to say to students, look globally at the opportunities.
Okay.
On Friday, just heard another movement that is seeking to, in areas where there isn't a Christian university, create little locally controlled and run Christian university outposts.
Okay.
Where you can do the first 2 years and then go to a larger Christian. And again, that is another place where Christian academics can be busy, not necessarily in the big system, but in these little alternative outposts. Yeah. And so,
that's cool.
Fight the good fight and keep the faith. That's what the Lord said, when I return, will I find faith on the earth?
Right.
And so fight the good fight.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that seems, I think, like a good place to end. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Dr. Cooper. We really appreciated our conversation with you. And thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. Really enjoyed this.
Yeah.
That was a privilege.
Yeah, thank you.